They didn't just win the Super Bowl, they annihilated a dynasty.
I warned you, didn't I? I said, beware these dogs.
On February 9, 2025, the Philadelphia Eagles marched into the biggest game of the footballing calendar.
The field, it is knocked away. Avante Maddox.
We the best in the world. That's it. One play at a time.
And humiliated Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. The final score said 40-22, but don't let that fool you. This wasn't a game. It was a demolition. And now the Birds are back and they look even better.
Philadelphia Eagles have won their 10th game in a row.
They're not just chasing a repeat, they're building a legacy, one that the rest of the NFC should be absolutely terrified of.
Philadelphia to the championship game.
Now, just 12 months ago, there were some pretty serious questions in Philadelphia. As we all remember, the team had crashed out of the playoffs in the first round in Tampa Bay after a terrible end to the 2023 regular season where they lost 5 of their last 6 games. Nick Sirianni was unquestionably on the hot seat, and there were real questions being asked about Jalen Hurts as both a passer and a leader. As a result, the 2024 offseason was make or break for the Eagles in so many ways, with GM Howie Roseman tasked with stopping the slide and turning this team into real contenders once more. And well, it's fair to say that he nailed that task, as we all saw. Starting with the defense, Philly had ranked 3rd last in the entire NFL in scoring defense in 2023, having given up 30 plus points in 5 of their last 8 games. Unsurprisingly, the defensive coordinator Sean Desai was fired as a result, and the team turned to veteran Vic Fangio to fix this flagging unit. Despite a disappointing spell as Broncos head coach, there's no doubt that Fangio is amongst the best in the business as a DC, having held the position for 7 different NFL franchises dating back to 1995. Fangio was a former assistant coach of the year in 2018 while at the Chicago Bears, but as good of a coach as he is, he would need some new personnel to turn this unit around. On day 1 of free agency, the Eagles decided to add Saints linebacker Zach Bond on a 1-year, $4 million deal, and now this wasn't necessarily the most eye-catching or flashy signing of free agency, but within weeks, it was clear that the Eagles and Fangio had their hands on one of the league's best linebackers. After 4 unspectacular years in New Orleans, Bond had the ultimate breakout season in his 5th year as a pro and would lead the team in tackles with 151, including 11 for loss. This led to him being named first team All-Pro alongside Fred Warner and Roquan Smith. Alongside Bond, though, at linebacker was Nakobe Dean, who had a breakout year of his own, recording 80 tackles with the 2 men forming a heartbeat of the defense. Unfortunately, though, the 24-year-old did suffer a torn patella tendon in the wildcard round of the playoffs, putting his status in jeopardy for the 2025 season. It was the secondary, though, that saw the biggest change on defense ahead of the 2024 campaign. You see, after a brutal 2023, the team opted to draft 2 cornerbacks with their first 2 selections, Quinyon Mitchell with pick 22 and Cooper DeJean with pick 40. Very quickly, Howie Roseman's faith in these 2 young men paid off as they both ranked amongst the top 10 corners in the league according to PFF, and both made the all-rookie team at season's end. They also added CJ Gardner-Johnson, who returned to the city of brotherly love after spending the 2023 season in Detroit. And yes, while Gardner-Johnson is better known for his trash talk and off-field antics, he was vital on the field in 2024 with 6 interceptions and 12 passes defended, contributing to a major turnaround on defense. Like in the span of 12 months, that Eagles defense, which had ranked 3rd last in scoring, had been transformed into the league's 2nd best, only conceding 2 more points than the LA Chargers. Like through the addition of Fangio, Bond, DeJean, Mitchell, Gardner-Johnson, and several others, it was clear that this Eagles defense had become a completely different animal. And well, on offense, yeah, we know what they did. They added Saquon Barkley. As we all know, Saquon Barkley's 2024 season was one of the best we've ever seen from a running back, breaking the 2,000-yard barrier with a game to spare, averaging a ridiculous 125.3 yards per game in the process. It really is possible, too, that the New York Giants will never live down their infamous decision to let Barkley walk, as he spent the entirety of last season gliding through defenses for their hated rivals and deservedly earning Offensive Player of the Year as a result. And what's crazy, too, is that in a league league where paying running backs seems to be going out of fashion, there was no doubt that the Eagles would break the bank to keep one of the very few game-changing backs in the league. As we all know, in March of this year, Barkley agreed to a 2-year extension worth $41.2 million, making him the highest paid running back in league history, which absolutely no one could begrudge him. Elsewhere on offense too, the big moves in the 2024 offseason were in extending the superstar receiving duo of Devonta Smith and AJ Brown, who combined for 1,912 yards and 15 touchdowns last year, despite missing 4 games each with injury. The team then also extended the contracts of offensive linemen Landon Dickerson and Jordan Mailata, who are both tied down in Philly through the 2028 season. As we all know, the Eagles' offensive line is arguably the best in the league and is such an important part of how this offense functions, giving Barkley space to run and Jalen Hurts time to throw. Beyond Mailata and Dickerson, the team also has Cam Jurgens and Lane Johnson on the books, keeping this rock-solid unit together for several more years to come. And that's the thing too, during the 2024 season, this team kind of just went from strength to strength. After a rocky 2-2 start and a narrow 20-16 win over one of the league's worst teams in the Cleveland Browns, few were tipping the Eagles to go all the way to glory in 4 months' time. Nevertheless though, the team rattled off 12 wins in their last 13 regular season games, with that sole loss coming in a 36-33 defeat to Washington in Week 16. It also is important to note that Jalen Hurts was injured in that game and replaced by Kenny Pickett, and it's truly easy to imagine that if Hurts had played that full game, that 3-point loss might have been different. As we all know though, in the NFC Championship game, the Eagles got their revenge on the Commanders, absolutely hammering them 55-23, and then of course 2 weeks later it was the same story in the Super Bowl, with the Chiefs having been annihilated, falling to a 34-0 deficit in the third quarter, having turned the ball over themselves 3 times. As the green confetti fell in Mercedes-Benz Stadium that Sunday night in February, many people's thoughts were already turning to next season, with the rest of the league wondering how exactly to beat this team, which had lost just 1 game in the last 19 weeks. And well, that's the bad news for the other 31 teams that are just in the NFL, is because, well, the Eagles aren't going anywhere. If anything, they might have gotten better. As we've said before, this offense is almost unchanged going into 2025, with star playmakers Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, and of course Saquon Barkley all signed on to run it back this season. In fact, the only real loss to this offense in the offseason had been right guard Mekhi Becton, who departed to the Chargers in free agency, as the Eagles couldn't quite afford to pay everyone. But I mean, in all honesty, they have gotten pretty close, and as we said earlier, despite the loss of Becton, this is still right up there as the best offensive line in football. And in a fairly low-key free agency in Philly, they added 2 tackles in Kendall Lamb and Matt Pryor from the Dolphins and Bears respectively to add further depth to this impressive unit. Beyond these 2 though, the Eagles also traded for Texans guard Kenyon Green, as well as drafting 3 O-linemen in rounds 5 and 6 in Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, and Cameron Williams. If any of these 3 guys are half as good as previously 7th round draft pick Jordan Mailata, Howie Roseman will be delighted with yet another draft steal. Other additions on offense included 2 new tight ends in Harrison Bryant and Kylan Granson, who may stand to feature more in the longer term if Dallas Goedert does walk at the end of this year. Goedert did manage to renegotiate his deal for 2025, and he remains in Philly on a $10 million deal before becoming a free agent at this year's conclusion. Adding 2 tight ends might be a sign they're planning for early life without Goedert going forward. Truthfully, the only concern for this team on offense this year is the departure of offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, who has left to become the head coach of the New Orleans Saints and taken several members of the coaching staff with him to the Bayou. Moore is undoubtedly an impressive coaching mind, having presided over the #1 offense in football twice in 3 years, while the offensive coordinator in Dallas, but the Eagles should still be fine without him in 2025. His replacement, Kevin Patullo, has worked for the organization since Sirianni was appointed in 2021 and has held the title of pass game coordinator and associate head coach for the last 2 seasons. After Moore's departure, he was promoted to offensive coordinator and is well placed as anyone to keep this offense rolling, as no one knows what makes this offense tick quite like he does. On defense, the biggest move was tying down Zach Bond for another 3 years though. Following his stellar All-Pro campaign last time out, he wasn't anywhere near as cheap this offseason, but the Eagles really had to secure his services again, and they managed to do just that at $51 million for 3 years. And of course, course, the Eagles didn't have a huge amount of salary cap to play with on defense, but they still did manage to make a few under the radar signings who might end up being this year's Zach Bond. One of those is Azeez Ojulari, a linebacker who spent the last 5 seasons as a New York Giant. Despite missing over 20 games with injury, he still managed to pick up 22 sacks over those 4 years, including 8 in his rookie year in 2021, which set a franchise rookie record. Ojulari might not quite haunt the Giants as much as the guy they let walk to the Eagles last offseason, but he seems like a solid option to this defense. As does former Patriot-in-Chief Joshua Uche, who had a career-best 11.5 sacks as recently as 2022. In a Vic Fangio system, it's possible that either of these guys could get back to their best in Eagles green. As for the draft though, the Eagles did use their first 5 picks on the defensive side of the ball. The first of those being used on Alabama linebacker Jiad Campbell. Campbell was named first team All-SEC last year, and as a result of his dominance at the collegiate level, many expected him to go in the middle of the first round. However, by the time the Eagles were on the clock at pick 31, Campbell was somehow still available, and Howie Roseman was all too happy to bring him to Philly. Campbell has exceptional speed for being a linebacker and has plenty of upside, having just turned 21 in February. Picking up a player as explosive and as exciting as Campbell at the end of the first round will no doubt have excited the Eagles faithful, adding more raw talent to an already stacked defense. Beyond Campbell, the Eagles drafted Andrew Makuba, a safety out of Texas who was also named All-SEC last year, recording 5 interceptions and 4 tackles for loss to help the Longhorns to the college football playoff semifinals. With CJ Gardner-Johnson departing yet again, it's possible that Makuba could be called upon to play a big role this year. Overall though, I mean, even looking at this roster now, it's pretty clear to see that this roster doesn't have many holes on it, if anywhere, truthfully. Like, they have the best receiving duo in football, the best running back in football, and the best offensive line in football, and a quarterback who's proven himself to turn up in the biggest moments. And yes, Jalen Hurts has endured plenty of criticism in his time, but his performances in the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl should have silenced even the harshest of critics. This is a man and a team that have proved that they will show up on the biggest stage, and that this team is now the team to beat in the NFC. While the Commanders had an extremely impressive campaign last year, they still lag significantly behind the Eagles in the NFC East, as was shown in the championship game at Lincoln Financial Field. And well, as for the Cowboys and Giants, I just don't really think they even come close. When this Eagles team is at its very best, they are a genuine juggernaut, and they look borderline unstoppable for so much of the second half of last season. Right now, they are the team to beat in the NFL, and the path to the Super Bowl goes through Philadelphia. So when Super Bowl 60 kicks off in Santa Clara next February, expect to see Nick Sirianni and his team coming out of the tunnel, aiming to reach the peak of the pro football world yet again.